Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining in the world. Thanks for listening into Windows 365 AMA today. I am so excited for today's topic. Taster and Sugar, I think this is the first time we've had Microsoft DevBox, you and your team on this Ask Microsoft Anything. So I'm super stoked for all the folks joining. If you haven't yet heard about Microsoft DevBox, well, then this is a great introduction. We're going to go over Microsoft Build highlights, all the new stuff that they're doing. But just very first, do you all want to introduce yourself? Sagar, we'll start with you.
Yeah, hi Christian. Hi everyone. Thank you. We are so excited to be here. I'm Sagar Lankala and I'm a product manager on the Microsoft DevBox team, primarily focusing on customizations and imaging, which helps customers get pre-configured, ready to code project-based dev boxes. We'll talk more about it during the session. But so excited to be here, and I've been on this team for over 5 years now. And whatever we released at Build, I would say that's the most exciting and the 360-degree view of product of DevBox product that we have released, and super excited to discuss about it in today's session.
Awesome.
And my name is Taysir Gurfal. I am a PM lead on the DevBox team. I work with Sagar and others. And thank you for joining. Thank you for inviting us to join you guys today. I'm also looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly excited to have you here because your team is working on, a cloud-based solution. You connect from Windows app. It's part of our ecosystem. Focus on developers, I know that for our customers, there are lots of folks that need this for the developers. And I know we'll probably even get into Microsoft, how we use DevBox internally. So just really excited to share your product and also all the updates because, yeah, again, Build was last week. So before we totally jump in, I want to cover some quick highlights. Some quick highlights from the Windows 365 side, per usual. And then we can go into some of the build announcements, which we'll dive into in more detail throughout the session. And obviously, folks, if you have questions on any of the given topics, please enter them in the chat so we can answer those questions. So for Windows 365, just a kind of a quick recap over the past month or so. For the Windows 365 frontline and shared for those cloud PCs, you can now resize them. This is frontline cloud PCs in dedicated mode. You can now resize them. That's in preview. So you can go from one SKU to the next. That was a top ask from a lot of our frontline customers. For all of our cloud PC provisioning, if you are provisioning a Windows 11 image from the gallery, Credential Guard and the Hypervisor Code Integrity, or HVCI, is now enabled by default for any new provisions, and that includes an admin reprovision or user reset. And also a huge thing that just went to preview on our Windows app on Windows is our token protection. That way, you can pair this up with conditional access, the Entra ID conditional access, and ensure that tokens can't be replayed. There's some device binding there that happens, so you can check all of that out at the ak.ms/w365 what's new for more stuff. And now for Microsoft DevBox, I'll quickly highlight some of the build announcements, and then Jason Sagar, I'm sure that you will provide more color and correct me if I misspeak on any of them. But to accelerate AI development, you all released the previews of serverless GPU and also integrate with the Azure Foundry. So we'll definitely get into that. Serverless GPU sounds incredible, and I can't wait to get into those use cases. The teams customizations and imaging. So for the various projects and teams that you manage, having the images ready to go. That's now GA. So that's also super cool. It's a unsung hero of all the projects. And then some of the features that you had released also at Build was the Open in VS Code and also DevBox as an MCP server, which all up at Build, we had larger discussions on MCP server for kind of an AI experience. So again, you all can fill us in on those details. And lastly, one customer we highlighted at Microsoft Build was our customer Fujitsu, one of a huge early adopter of Microsoft DevBox, already in production, highly leveraging this service. And really one kind of quote that stood out to me was that they mentioned that quote, our developers using Microsoft DevBox and GitHub Copilot decrease their workload by 20% over a year. We expect that to total 375,000 hours saved, a massive benefit for Fujitsu. So I know that we highlighted them at Build. You can also take a look at this customer story at ak.ms/Fujitsu dev story for all the details and how they're using Microsoft DevBox. So that was a fun little recap, and that was only a couple of highlights from Build. So folks, if you want to see the rest of the highlights for Microsoft DevBox at Build while we're chatting today to spur more questions, you can go ahead and check out the ak.ms link that we have for the Build DevBox blog, which is ak.ms/devbox/blog-build25. So that was a fun recap. Did I get it right, folks?
You did awesome job. Thank you, Christian.
Okay. So what do I want to dive into first? I think I'm personally very curious about the accelerating AI development. So the serverless GPU integration with Azure Foundry. What can you tell me about those?
Yeah, I can probably talk about it. So, as we all know, right, AI is really reshaping how we build, deploy, and scale software, and that too at an unprecedented rate. Like, I'm not sure how many of us even talked about agentic workflows in 2024, right? But over the last few months, like the pace at which the agentic workflows and AI have been evolving, it's super exciting. At the same time, like it's an exciting time to be a developer and also a bit overwhelming as well. And developers need environments that can really keep up with the speed and demands of such innovation. So it's so critical to help these developers focus on what they do best and they love doing, that is code and build innovations rather, and remove all the drudgery out and the burden of configuring infrastructure, when especially when building AI applications with streamlined access to compute, pre-built models, environment configuration tools, and so on. So to with the aim of helping developers get started with AI development easily and quickly, DevBox now empowers the developers to get started rapidly with ready-to-code cloud development environments that are optimized for AI workloads. So a couple of things that we have actually introduced and launched at Build were access to serverless GPUs, and then the second is integration with Azure AI Foundry. So first, with the serverless GPUs, whenever a developer is working on an AI application or transforming an existing application into an AI application, they need access to GPUs. And as all of us know, access to GPUs is not that easy. Today we observe that in organizations, especially enterprises, they need to raise multiple tickets, have back and forth with their admin teams, and even after that, probably they are either denied access, or even if they get lucky and get access to GPUs, which are obviously more expensive, it takes days, which is slowing the developers down. But with DevBox's support for serverless GPUs, the developer will have instant and on-demand access to serverless GPUs. We have partnered with Azure Container Apps. So whenever a DevBox is created, as long as it's configured for the project, the developer will get access to an Azure Container App that they can instantiate and get access to GPUs as they test out their workloads. It has been it's literally a setup experience for the developer. The developer just connects to the DevBox, and then they'll open what we call the DevBox GPU shell, and then they can just access instantiate and access the serverless GPU that they have. So there's something. This has been a game changer, and we have, like, we discussed about it with many customers, and they're super excited, and they're already trying it out. So that is one. And the second is, like, once GPUs are there, once they have access to GPUs, the second thing is they need to integrate, or they need to use some models or LLMs that have been out there. We know that Azure AI Foundry provides more than 1900 latest and greatest models, right, in Azure AI Foundry, which provides a secure access to these models. Um, to these models, and then and there are many other models that are made available through integrations with third parties as well. So with Azure, with our integration with Azure AI Foundry, the developers will be able to again go to the DevBox GPU shell, and then just access the models that are available in the Foundry and that have been made available for the respective developer. Like, for example, they can list all the available models that they have. They can pick and deploy a model for the workload that they are having, or view deployed models and use them as they are building out their AI applications. So this is also something that has been a most awaited functionality. We have worked very closely with the customers to understand, like, how they would like to access these models and so on. We have provided again a zero setup experience for the developer, so that the developer can just get started with building or transforming their existing applications into an AI application.
Cool.
Yeah, this is awesome. And maybe one thing to add super quickly, Christian, here to what Sagar was saying is, from an end user perspective, myself and my team has been using these features for a couple of weeks now, and they have been really magical, because like PMs and engineers on dev in general are expected to be playing with these models, experimenting and exploring. And these two features have made it super magical, because all you need to do as a developer is just create a dev box and start using it. And all of these capabilities are already ready for you to use, which is super awesome.
Yeah, I think maybe even taking a step back, I wanted to, for folks that this is their first time really listening into DevBox, I wanted to do a quick kind of comparison. So like with Windows 365, the way that you create a Cloud PC for a user is you create a provisioning policy, and that has the image, it has the location, it has other just characteristics of that VM. And then you assign a group of users to it. And this is all done in Intune. So can you explain a little bit on how that configuration works? I know it's all through Azure, but how does like the project and the teams, how does that all work out?
Yeah, absolutely. I can take a step at this, and Sagar, please feel free to add. The way to think about the structure of the box is that you go to Azure, you start by creating a dev center. And then within that dev center, basically you create as many projects as you need, right? And then you get to basically pre-configure those projects, set the guardrails that you want to set, and your organizations is mandating. And then you'll also get to isolate those projects depending on the use case, right? So you might want to say, I want to fully isolate those projects from each other, even on a networking perspective, right? You get to set what type of resources those different projects will get access to, right? And then with our team customizations and imaging capabilities, those different development teams will be able to customize those projects based on the tooling that they are using, so that at the end of the day, the developer is just creating a box and it's ready to code for them. They don't really need to install any tools. They can get going from the get-go, basically. And so that is the structure of how to set up dev boxes in general for teams. And that is all because of these unique needs that developers and dev teams have in comparison to the generic or the general population of AVD users.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think we'll probably get into more of those controls. So I know that you mentioned a couple at build. the GA of the customizations. So I'm sure we'll get into that in a bit. But I did want to, I noticed we have a question coming in. The question is, I work on apps for 2 to 3 clients at a time. Do they need a DevBox license or do I?
I think it depends on whether the client needs to access the box or not. If you know, in this case, the person is working with different clients, we've seen some of our customers do that, and they basically create a project, separate project per client. That way, you know, they make sure that those projects are isolated. You know, things that are confidential, you know, are confidential. But that is if the client doesn't really need to access, right? However, if the client also needs to access DevBox, then I think we'll be talking about a feature that we you know, is still under development, which is guest accounts, and we still don't have that today, but it's work in progress.
Got it. So basically, so if I heard you correctly, you know, if the client needs access or wants to isolate it, so it's they manage the security, then essentially they would have to set up the project, and you would have to somehow be a user of it. It would not, like, I guess we're not, we don't have the guest accounts, or still in Windows 365, we're still working on that too.
Yep.
But somehow if you get a user identity in their tenant, then that way it is separate, isolated. But if you're saying if the client doesn't have a specific preference, and you're kind of working out of your own code base, then you can just have your own, Azure subscription dev box and create different boxes for different customers you work for. Is that kind of an accurate summary?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, cool. So speaking of the projects, and you mentioned kind of the security, the isolation, and just different governance. Can you tell me more about what controls there are, whether it's security, whether it's cost, and also what the imaging, what went GA with the customization imaging?
Absolutely. Saga, do you want to take a stab at customizations and imaging, and then maybe we can circle back and double click on the other aspects of project management and device management and cost controls?
Yeah, let me do that. I think Tesir mentioned this before, where we see DevBox is empowering enterprise developers with self-service of ready-to-code project-based dev boxes, right? So when we say ready-to-code, like there are many other VDI solutions out there in the market. Even within Microsoft, we have many VDI solutions. One of the core differentiator and what we are trying to provide to customers is that a developer on day one, when they join let's say a specific project and they connect to the dev box, they actually have all of the tools and packages and repositories that they need to work on, like readily available on the machine, right? So it's a truly ready to code experience where as a developer, I can just connect to the dev box. I can see all the tools that are there, packages that are there to contribute to the team. For example, one of our customers have leveraged the team customizations and imaging experience, where they mentioned that it's an insurance chain based in UK, and they were doing some math, and apparently developers were taking about 5 weeks to submit the first pull request.
Oh,
It was
wow.
taking almost 2 to 3 weeks to even set up the entire tools and packages. Like, just to keep in mind, these developers, enterprise developers, do not have access to install tools on their own. So they actually raise tickets for each of the tools that needs to be installed on their machines. There's an admin team that actually installs, like remotely connects into the machine, connects installs the tools and so on. From there, we provided a ready to code. They provided a ready to code experience with DevBox, where the first PR was created within 2 days, right? That has been like a revolutionary for them. They are fully bought into DevBox and they're rolling it out to thousands of their developers as we speak, right? So that is just one example. So we have observed this pattern during our interactions with customers and so on. We actually introduced team customizations and imaging solution at Ignite last year, that is in November. So what's team customizations? Basically, the admins admins will be able to just create a configuration file, like config as code file, that will define, hey, what is the base image that they would like to use, what are the different tools that are needed for that respective team, what are the repositories that the respective team works on, so that it can be automatically cloned onto the machine. So all of this is defined in a config as code file, and this config as code file can just live in the source control repository. It's attached as a catalog. We have this concept of a catalog that can be attached at the project level. Like they spoke about the dev center, project structure. Project is where the dev team gets attached to. So the catalog, the repository can be just attached to the respective project directly, and these config as code files can be used to directly, configure the DevBox pool, which is like an equivalent of Win365's provisioning policy, and then dev boxes get created. Like whenever a developer is trying to create a dev box in that pool, like the provisioning policy, they'll automatically get a machine that is pre-configured with all the tools, packages, and even repositories clone and so on. So it's a truly ready to go experience. Now with imaging, right? Like as you were working on that, workflow, what we also identified is that like when all of these tools are getting installed, packages are installed, it will take time, right? Like there are physics involved and everything. It will take time. So it need not happen for every developer who's creating a dev box on the team. So we have introduced a built-in imaging solution where with a single click, this config as code file um, will be converted into an image. Like there's generalization that takes place. All the tools are installed, packages are installed, repositories are cloned, and then a custom image gets generated, which is used when the developer is creating a dev box. So that way, there is huge performance improvement that is there whenever a developer and the second developer creates a dev box, if that makes sense. So we have introduced both of these at Ignite, and we have got some great feedback. Obviously, we have addressed that feedback, streamlined the workflows, and we have launched the general availability of it at Build. And along with that, what I'm super thrilled and excited about is we are not just enabling customers to take advantage of the AI and the agentic workflows, but we are actually embracing it, as Tesir mentioned, to improve the overall experience. So we have actually released an agentic workflow that will help customers directly generate these customizations for the DevBox to work on a specific project. Actually have a video that we can play with audio, and then the audience will be able to see the experience that they would have, that customers would have to generate this customizations file by just conversations, right? I'll stop talking. Let's play the video, and I think audience will get a sense of what we are speaking about here.
I'm a dev manager on the eShop application team, and like all dev managers, I want my developers to hit the ground running with a dev environment that just works. Thanks to DevBox customizations, I can do exactly that by creating a config as code file called imagedefinition.yaml. It lives in our source control and tells DevBox exactly how to configure machines for our team. Now, writing YAML by hand is so 2024. I want something smarter, faster, and less prone to tab versus space drama. So let's check out the new AI-assisted agentic workflow using the DevBox VS Code extension and MCP server. I open the eShop repo in VS Code, launch agent mode, and simply ask, help me configure a DevBox for this repo. From there, Copilot scans the code, understands the app stack, web, APIs, Blazor, all that jazz, and figures out the tools and packages I'll need. It checks against my org's allowed package list, confirms what's needed, and bam, generates a complete image definition.yaml using the built-in winget, PowerShell, and git clone tasks. It even pre-configures a git clone of the eShop repo, so when devs get their dev box, they're not staring at an empty desktop wondering what to do next. Want to tweak things? Easy. I tell Copilot, add SQL Server, configure RabbitMQ, and use Node.js 18LTS. Copilot updates the YAML in real time. No manual edits, no fuss. Node version gets updated, and both SQL Server and RabbitMQ gets configured. Once I'm satisfied with the overall configuration, I can validate and apply these settings directly to my own DevBox using tools built into the DevBox extension. Confirm the UAC prompt, and all my tools and packages get installed, just like that. Bonus! Thanks to the DevBox MCP server, I can even tweak Windows settings. I just say, switch to dark mode. And Copilot takes care of it and switches the theme to dark mode. No more endless control panel clicking. With just a short conversation, I now have a ready-to-code DevBox configuration. I check the YAML into a repo, link it to my project, and from then on, every developer gets a pre-configured cloud DevBox, tailored for the eShop repo. It just works.
Wow, that was really cool. So
Yeah, so we released we calling it the authoring agentic workflow, and we have released it at build, and customers can take advantage of it right now. One other scenario that we haven't actually shown in the video is what we call it the lift and shift scenario. Now, for example, many enterprise developers and dev teams are actually working on projects already, right? So they have their development environment that is already configured and so on. They can just give a prompt, something like, hey, I want to configure a dev box, just mimic my current development environment. It will scan through the file system, identify all the developer related tools and packages, even VS Code extensions, and generates an image definition.yaml file that they can use for the entire team to create dev boxes that are pre-configured, just mimicking the pre-configured development environment that they have been working on. Even that tool is out there now. So we will be continuing to add more tools, supporting more scenarios and so on. But this is also something that we have released along with the general availability of team customizations and imaging.
yeah, that's super cool. I mean, the part that is super exciting for me is that, I mean, VS Code is your environment to do your dev work, and so it makes so much sense to just include it there in that experience and have that chat based experience. So that's really super cool. I'm glad that you're able to show that video, because I think it kind of puts into context, like, again, for folks like not immersed into the world of DevBox. Hopefully it gives you a little bit more example of how your developers could use this solution. Yeah, to what you said, Sagar, to be productive on and check in on day 2 instead of week 5. That's super cool.
Oh, our target is day 1 and probably within the
Perfect.
first
Yeah.
hour. So that's what internally we were able to achieve with our dev teams.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, that's a really good target. You were mentioning imaging earlier, and you're like, yeah, so it'll handle the generalization, the sysprep, and I've done a decent amount of that back in my day, so I understand how much easier it is to have the system and the tooling do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Taser, I know that you were going to go into some of the other maybe benefits and the controls that projects have, but we have a question, so we'll come back to that. One of the questions that we got was, and maybe some of them Sagar actually answered already, but one, how long does it take to provision a dev box? Can I provision multiple dev boxes at one time? We'll start with those two, and then there's 2 more after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So today it takes about less than 25 minutes to provision a dev box. This is something that we are actively working on improving, of course. And then, yes, absolutely. You can definitely create more than a dev box. This is where your organizational guardrails kicks in. And so this is, you'll be operating as a developer within those guardrails, right? So, internally, I think, you can, for example, for Microsoft, we see developers creating as many dev boxes as they need, and that works well. So you can create your own dev boxes. You can delete them externally, it depends on the organization, and some have some guardrails depending on the project, and so but then the flexibility is there. Developers will be able to create and delete the boxes, and this is what we mean by saying self-service, right? You don't have to reach out to your admin to request, that they create a dev box on your behalf or anything like that. All of that is being delegated to the development teams in this case.
Right, because the assignment says, like, okay, you're part of this group, and therefore you're able to create projects when you come into the to DevBox portal, right?
Yes,
Um,
and now with the MCP server that Sagar talked about, developers no longer need to go to even to the dev portal, right? Like they can, right from within their development environment, they can, view all the existing dev boxes that they have access to. They can create, manage, delete, restore, create snapshots, all of that, without leaving their editor, which is cool.
that is really cool. Two more questions in terms of provisioning dev boxes. Does it require Entra ID, and is it managed in Azure or Intune?
Do you want to take that one, Sagar?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are two parts to the question. One is, does the user need an Entra ID for getting the dev box? The answer is yes. So we use Entra ID. So typically, what the customers would do is they would they would have an Entra ID for the respective developers, and the developers just get added to the project that they are working in, right? Like it could be they might be added directly as part of the Entra user ID or as part of the Entra group ID, right? And then they'll get access to creating these dev boxes. So yes, Entra ID is required. And the second question, if I'm not wrong, is about like whether it's managed in Azure or Intune. It's actually a combination of both.
Right.
Now, when Tesser spoke about the dev center and the project. These are resources. These are all Azure resources that are created by the admins, which is just mimicking the organizational structure, right? Like you can think about there's an enterprise which has multiple development teams. There is a different reporting chain that they have. It might be through their different center of excellences that they have, or probably different functions that they have in the organization. So based on how they would like to attribute cost, apply different settings. They can create as many dev centers as they would like and map different projects to the dev center. Um, and all of these are resources that are created in Azure. But at the same time, we are actually built on top of Windows 365, getting all the amazing functionalities that Win 365 provides. So whenever a dev box is created, the dev box similar to Win 365 actually gets enrolled into Intune, domain joined to their carpnet, so that all of the endpoints, just like how and admins, like their endpoint admins, will be able to take advantage of Intune for endpoint management and so on. They'll be able to perform the same operations like Win 365 on dev boxes as well. So it's both. It's Azure, and the dev boxes are enrolled into Intune. It's like um, uh, combining the amazing functionalities that both of the platforms provide to make
Yeah.
life easy for developers and dev teams.
Yeah, because I know that, I mean, Intune is a huge signal, especially into conditional access, because it has the Intune really really shines in the compliance checks to make sure that it has the various I don't know, security configurations installed. So that's good. And then did you for the dev boxes, can they be either the hybrid joined or just pure Entra joined? Does it support both configurations like Windows 365 Cloud PCs?
Yes, absolutely. We support both. We
Okay.
have, so we call it the network connections, right? So I think in Win365 we have two types, right? Like one is called ANC, Azure Network Connection, and we have OPNC, the on-prem network connection. So similar to Win365, we actually support both of them. A customer can choose to connect directly through the Azure Network Connection, or the on-prem. They can connect back to the on-prem on-prem network connection that Win365 supports. In addition, we also support the Microsoft hosted network that Win365 actually supports. Again, as I mentioned, we are extending and providing all of the great functionalities that Win365 provides and optimizing the service for developer scenarios and developer workloads.
So that actually maybe leads into my next question, Taser. Um, in terms of the project configurations, I think you even mentioned like the enterprise guardrails. So I think one of them you mentioned that you can create and make sure that the projects are separated. Like, what checkboxes are there? Is it just a simple checkbox, or how does that actually work?
Oh, there are lots of checkboxes. But I mean, to simplify, right? Like the concept works like this, right? Like admins basically create all of these guardrails, and then they delegate, right? So admins, they don't need to manually, manage these projects, create boxes for developers, and do all of that work. All of that gets delegated to dev teams. And that's where the team customizations and imaging capabilities that Sagar talked about kicks in, right? But then when it comes to guardrails, right, like it starts from, those projects that we talked about, and, admins can basically, choose to limit the maximum number of dev boxes each developer can create, for example. They can choose to utilize custom networks. They can choose to isolate those projects. We have also, during build, we have also GA'd project policy, which is another cool feature. It basically enables the admin to say, okay, like for this project, I want it to have access to all of these specific resources, these specific images, these specific networks, right? And be able to like specifically, give specific access to those projects based on the project needs and the organizational guardrails in place, right? All of that on the project management side of things, which is one of the unique capabilities we have. But then there is also device management, and that is where we build on top of the great capabilities that Windows 365 provide. That's where Defender, Intra, Intune support comes in. And then the third aspect of the guardrails in this case, of course, is cost controls. And there's a lot that we offered there. For example, in builds, we released hibernation based on schedules, based on activity. We also released developer offboarding, which is another great capability that enables admin to further control costs, where they can say, okay, like for this specific project, if developers or users haven't been active or using their boxes for that specific time period, then we schedule those boxes for deletion. Of course, like there's a whole flow where the developer get notified, and they can choose to extend or not, all of that stuff, right? So
Yeah, I think and maybe one more like clarifying question, because we have a couple in the chat, but just while we're on this topic, earlier there was a question about having a DevBox license, but you're for DevBox, is it all just like kind of Azure pay as you go sort of thing, or is it like Windows 365 where there's licenses?
Sagar, do you want to take this one?
Oh yeah, I can, and please feel free to chime in. So for when coming to DevBox pricing and billing, right? Like as Tesir was mentioning, developers will be able to spin up multiple dev boxes. There's no specific license that needs to be assigned for the respective user. It's just about how many dev boxes the developer or the dev teams are using, right? So the pricing works per dev box. So based on the number of hours that they are using the dev box, there's a certain price that that gets accumulated. And we also have a maximum price per month per dev box. So if they want to use, so there's a pay as you go model up till the maximum per dev box per month, and it obviously depends on the SKU that they are using. For example, we support the 8-core compute SKU, 16-core, and 32-core compute SKUs for very large workloads. And similarly, we have 4 different storage SKUs that we offer, right? 256, 512, 1024, and 2048. So based on the SKUs that the developer selects when they're creating the dev box and the number of hours that they use, they pay as we call it the pay as you go up till a maximum per dev box per month.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that context helps. Because I know, again, in the Windows 365 world, it's just like, all right, you have a license. If it's enterprise, it's like a per user per month. For the front line, it's more of like a, it's like almost shared licenses in a way. So no, that's super cool. And I think it makes one, all the customizations that you were just talking about, Taser, it's like one is just for project configurations and what people can do. But at the same time, part of it is, well, look, we know that you want to spin these up, spin these down. If you're not using it, I'm going to delete it because I'm not paying for it. So I think that's
exactly.
that helps.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And that makes sense, right? Like if you look at Windows 365 versus DevBox, right? Like Windows 365 provides, a laptop replacement, right? It's like it is supposed to be a dedicated machine, right?
Mhm.
For that, user to use 24/7. And so that aligns very well with the pricing model that you guys have on the Windows 365 side. On the DevBox side, like it's more of a cloud-based development environment, and developers need the flexibility. And so this is where our pricing model makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah, I think
Yeah, and
that's a
just
great
to add,
clarification. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Sagar.
yeah, and just to add, right, like a developer might have multiple dev boxes. They might be or might not be working on all the dev boxes at the same time, right? So, and then the the consumption gets attributed only when the dev box is running. Like for example, I might be working on two different features as a developer at the same time, but on a particular day I might be working on only one feature which is configured in one dev box. I'll just be using that dev box, and for the second dev box there is no consumption charge that is there for compute. There is a storage cost that would be there per month, but there's no consumption compute consumption that happens on the second dev box that's not running and there.
Right, and even like that, one of the first questions that we got asked for the person that is working for 2 or 3 different clients, like I would imagine most times they're probably doing 1 hour of work for one client. They don't want to get charged for the other 2 clients, etc. So that's super cool. Okay, let's get back into some of the questions because we are shortly running out of time. These things go by so fast. Okay. So Sagar, back on the agentic workflows. I think that's what the context is. But the question is, do I have to use VS Code, or is there a way to integrate it with other editors?
That's a great question. So we have started providing the agentic workflow in VS Code using the VS Code extension, but at the same time, as you have seen, we also launched an MCP server out there, which provides the extensibility for all the other clients that support MCP servers, right? So it's not just restricted to the VS Code agent mode or the VS Code's agentic workflow. We will be providing these tools even through the MCP server, so that custom developers, dev teams, and admins will be able to take advantage of other agents that are out there, or other editors that are out there, or platforms like let's say GitHub. They might be just living in GitHub, and I think all of you might have seen the coding agent and so on, right? So where developers might live more of their life, day-to-day life, in GitHub, platforms like GitHub, and they can take advantage of the great tools that we provide for generating these customizations. And not just customizations, to be honest, as Taser mentioned, a developer will be able to even connect to a dev box, pin up a dev box, view all the dev boxes that they have. So by providing these tools in the MCP server, we believe we are meeting the developers where they are, irrespective of the tools and platforms that they're using.
Sounds good. And another question is, does DevBox support Linux? I'm assuming they mean creating a DevBox VM running Linux.
Yeah, very good question. It's a popular question, and I'll answer it in 2 parts. So I'll talk about what we support right now, and then I'll talk about what we are working on. So we do today, as of right now, you can definitely utilize WSL. And for that, that's where also like the open and VS Code experience you mentioned at the beginning comes into play, Christian, where the developer can definitely like choose if they want. They don't really even need to RDP into their machine. They can open their local VS Code and access their WSL inside of their dev boxes. That works today. Beyond that, we've been getting customer and user feedback that WSL is not good enough for us. We need a more standalone Linux approach, and that is actually today working in progress for that. We still don't have anything to share publicly, but expect to hear updates from us on that soon.
Awesome. And then, yeah, so great time for the feedback, ak.ms/devbox/feedback. So I know that you all monitor the feedback just like we monitor our feedback. So so hopefully folks are listening that do need that. Please chime in and give them additional motivation to continue working on it. So then I think on the flip side of that, I don't think we've gotten into too much of how you access your dev box. So how do you access your dev box?
Yeah, very, very good question, Christian. That part is very flexible, right? You can definitely choose to, use the Windows app, which is what I'm sure this audience is very familiar with that. That's what, people use to access Windows 365. And users can use that to access DevBox. They can use the client if they want. They can use the browser. And that works great for a full desktop user experience. But then again, for developers, the sky is the limit, and sometimes they don't need a full desktop experience, and sometimes developers prefer to have a headless access to their DevBox, right? And so for that, today we actually support Open DevBox in VS Code. And so the developer from within their local, machine, they can use, a Visual Studio Code client or using their browser to actually open, their DevBox in VS Code. And that comes with lots of benefits. Accessing WSL is one of the benefits, of course. But there are, of course, use cases where the developer might want to really focus on their typing experience, or maybe they are a little bit far from their DevBox, or we've been hearing about scenarios where sometimes users want to locate their DevBoxes closer to their backend resources, which means that those DevBoxes are a little bit far from where developers are located. All of those scenarios, the Open in VS Code experience that we have just launched during build provides a very good solution for.
That's really cool. I was looking at that, and I was curious about the OpenVS code. But that sounds super cool. I will actually want to double click into that later. Okay. We have a couple more questions. I thought we had one more. Okay, let's see. Going back to Taser, the serverless GPUs. I know you mentioned that you sort of enable that at like the project level. How does a DevBox user actually like trigger? I don't know. I guess I want to actually use the GPU.
Yeah, that's what I called magical earlier, because it is magical. It's like you just open your DevBox, you open your terminal, and it's there. It's one of the terminals that you can use, right? It's truly magical. Like the developer doesn't need to do anything. It's there for them. It's amazing. You have to try it to believe it. So
I feel like I need to spin up my own DevBox after this. I need to play with all these goodies. No, that is really cool. I love that seamless. So does it also does it show up in like Resource Manager and stuff?
No, it doesn't, because it's not a resource attached. It's not. So this is where a standalone GPU attached to your DevBox is different than a serverless GPU, right? So this is like a shell experience, which has its pros. For example, you would need to pay for a dedicated GPU all the time, whether you are using it or not. However, with this experience, the big benefit there is you only pay for what you use. As soon as you spin up that shell, you use it, you pay for it. As soon as you exit that experience, the meter stops, right? Which is very flexible, very cost efficient for the AI world that we live in.
Cool. And then actually, I think going back to it, we had one more question that was on kind of costs. So one of the questions was, are there controls in place to help us manage costs in case people leave their DevBox is open and running? I think you mentioned one control, but if you can just kind of summarize all of them.
Yeah, so we talked about, what did we say? We talked about hibernation, and there are new capabilities that we have introduced there. So hibernate on disconnect is one new capability where you can configure your dev boxes to automatically go into hibernation after a period of time from when the user disconnects, right? So that's pretty much automated. Others choose to schedule hibernation. So if like my users typically use their dev boxes from that specific hour to that specific hour, then scheduling is another way to go about it. But then we also talked about offboarding, which is so hibernation helps you save your compute cost, right? Offboarding takes that to the next level because it helps you save on your storage cost as well. And so you can configure that on a project level and say, okay, like if if dev boxes are not being used for this number of days, then kick off the offboarding flow, which gives the developer a grace period. If they don't respond within that grace period, their dev box will automatically get deleted. So there's lots of automation there, and the goal is to free the admin from having to manually keep an eye on boxes and delete them and manage those things. But admins can still use AMA to actually monitor resource utilizations and keep an eye on the boxes and how much they are utilized, and all of that stuff is also supported at a dev center level.
Cool.
And AMA stands for Azure Monitor Agent.
I was gonna say it's not the Ask Microsoft anything, is it?
Yeah.
We help monitor.
Yes.
That's good. That's plugged into that same monitoring framework that Azure provides. That's good. Okay. One last question. So, all right. Okay, I'm in. How do I get started with Microsoft DevBox?
That's awesome. Great question. Sagar, do you want to take a stab at that, or happy to?
Yeah, absolutely. Super easy. You can, just get started in the Azure portal. Aka.ms, probably will pop it up. Yeah. So Aka.ms DevBox, get started. This will actually take you to the DevBox experience within the Azure portal, where you can just quickly get started. We actually also launched, in the recent months, we actually launched a quick start experience where with a single click of a button, you will the dev center, project, all of the configurations, like the default configurations get created, and as you can just go ahead and create a dev box for yourself on the developer portal. So it's a truly seamless experience that we have provided. If you want to just get started with the default settings and so on, and see for yourself all of the great functionalities that we just talked about, be it the serverless GPUs and so on. So there would be additional setting, as Tesser mentioned, while we provide the flexibility for developers to take advantage of all of these functionalities, it is still in the control of the admins to enable or disable use. Even if enabled, what are the SKUs that the developer can use, or even how many parallel instances that they can use, be it dev boxes or be it serverless GPUs. All of this can be configured, so you can just configure them and get started with DevBox.
Yeah, it's really easy to get started, especially for our Windows 365 users, because they already meet lots of the pre-requirements, licenses and everything. And so if they actually use the quick start experience that Sagar, was highlighting, it's basically a single form that automates lots of the, steps that's needed to, get started with DevBox, right? And this is great for tire kicking, for just getting a quick feel of DevBox and how it works. And then, as Sagar said, admins can definitely dig deeper and customize and configure as much as they want.
Awesome. All right. So last 5 minutes. Okay, so the rest of the docs, ak.ms/devbox/docs. But yeah, now that we're last 5 minutes, I always love ending the AMA, going around giving tips or tricks or kind of final thoughts, or just maybe a takeaway for listeners today. So Taste, I'm going to start with you.
Well, it was a pleasure coming and speaking, and answering questions. So very much appreciate the opportunity. Please, like we love hearing feedback from our users. So like if you get a chance to try some of the features that we talked about today, if you have any feedback for us, any thoughts, please do reach out. We keep an eye on our feedback tickets, suggestion tickets. Feel free to reach out directly to us as well. Would love to work closely with you guys to see how we can provide a great DevBox experience for all of your users.
All right, Sagar.
Yeah, plus one to everything that Taysir said. We as a team are continuing to make DevBox even better for you. So please keep the feedback coming, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly as well. Both Taysir and me are on LinkedIn and so on. You can reach out to us directly. We would love to see what you do with what you do with the new capabilities that we have released in DevBox, and also how we can make it even better for you, especially in the AI native world that we are getting into.
Awesome. For me, the takeaway is go use that GPU and it's magic. So, all right. So we're gonna wrap up the show. Again, thank you everyone for listening in from wherever you're joining us. We still have the next AMA in June. So stay tuned. And you can pre-save that date at ak.ms/AMA/Windows 365. To save that date and time. So been a pleasure. Been your host, Krish Montoya, and we will see you next month. Thank you. Bye.